Welcome to Off the Record Marketing Deconstructed. On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about holiday campaigns and if we should do them, if we shouldn't do them, and how they relate to the clients that we work with. So, what do we want to do for our retail clients for holiday coming up? I think we need to look at starting them pretty soon because it is the season.
Yeah, the one of the things that we have to talk about a lot are, you mentioned it, whether or not we should do one, right? You talk about industry, you talk about location, you talk about the brand in itself, right? There's so much advertising going on in so many different ways between, kind of that September-ish mark, really up to Black Friday. You get a little bit after, but it's that Black Friday. There's a lot of money being spent leading up to that. So that's the first hurdle, right? Is figuring out whether or not holiday campaigns are right for your brand.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because our retail client actually called and she's like, I see all of this stuff on Facebook about how to run a Black Friday campaign or download this or buy this program and we'll show you how to do it and how we set it up. And I was like, you don't need all of that stuff. We just have to plan in advance on what you're going to do. And it's really interesting to me because retail, from that standpoint, like they're shopping for their stuff that they're going to put in their shops like a year in advance. So like last July, almost, they were already shopping for what they were going to put in their stores in the fall and holiday time. And so I actually think at that point, when your stuff starts to come in, you can start planning from the standpoint of this is what I want to showcase, this is what I want to advertise, and you can start putting together campaigns and doing any creative that you need to do, from taking pictures and putting together your descriptions and figuring out how you're going to put them on your website or how to put them in your store or how you're going to advertise them and start getting that ready so that when the time comes in July, August, September, then you can really start to look at when am I going to launch my campaigns and what am I going to put out there and how much money am I going to put to my spend. From a retail standpoint, I think when we're looking at our service-based companies and our service-based clients, that's a little bit different. A lot of times I will tell them, and you guys chime in here, but like I want to tell them, I don't think you need to spend money. I think you need to let Black Friday and holiday stuff run because your campaigns are going to cost a lot more, your spend's going to cost a lot more, and your leads are going to go down. So if you're not in that retail space, you don't need to be running.
I completely agree. I think around the holidays, people are much more concerned with what they're going to stick in their child's stocking and not the next time they're getting their furnace looked at. I do think for the service-based people, I think after Christmas, when people's lives kind of return to reality and you get past being with family and you get past all the shopping and the craziness of the holidays, I think that's the time to return. Also knowing that people have just spent a lot of money on the holidays. So while you might get that awareness back, you might not see that return right away the second you turn your advertising back on after the holiday. But I do think when you're going to start, getting back in there immediately is a good idea, but just have an expectation of how quick people are going to respond to those ads.
And I think that mindset of like service versus retail, like it's okay to have opposite schedules almost. Like I feel like sometimes people go into the holiday season and they're like, okay, now it's time. We got to hit all the consumers hard across the board. And it's okay to take a step back, like especially if you're that service-based business.
Let's talk. So we kind of hit on a few things, and something that I think is an interesting kind of mesh of some of the things that were said here. We're talking about the holidays, and we're talking about the consumer part of it, right? And how there's such a focus on consumers because we know that they have to shop, right? Like they have to, right? And whether it's small, large, like they're going to shop, and so we as brands try to prioritize the consumers in that time. And I think Kirk mentioned, right, when things kind of return to normal after the new year, right? And so let's think about, like if we think about like January through March-ish, right? That's kind of it's a little bit of a lull, right? In terms of there's not any real major Valentine's Day is in there, which could be a consumer type of a thing. But again, thinking about it from the consumer perspective, once you get to like March, April, May-ish, you're talking about tax returns, which is another good opportunity, not just for retail, but for the service piece of it, right? When people might have a little bit more, they've got a sizable check coming, right? And maybe they've been putting off, whether it's putting in that fence or going to do this or having their HVAC checked or buying a home, it could be anything, right? But like that's another time when the consumer is looking to spend because they have the means to, as opposed to they have to.
Yeah.
Well, and that leads into that like spring cleaning mentality too. So I feel like both of those pieces kind of piggyback off of each other and give that space and time for the service-based industry to come into play.
Yeah, but think about it too from the standpoint of, and we work in so many different business verticals, so if you look at our retail clients and we're trying to get them set up for their holiday campaigns and look at who their clients are, their customers are, and try and set up their campaigns around that. So then we look at some of our financial clients, right? Which I think if you look at the beginning of the year, we want them to be present at that beginning of the year as people are looking at their budgets and they're looking at how they want to spend and save over the next year and what kind of help do they need, what kind of investments do they want to do.
New Year's resolutions,
yeah,
right?
New Year's resolutions, like all of that. So you have to really focus in on who it is that you're trying to reach. So that's where that ideal client profile comes into play and is really important because that sets up your entire campaigns. And so as we're looking at our retail clients and they are looking at a customer that has trending buying patterns, right? And so we know that they're going to be buying around holiday. They're going to be buying and spending money when that retail or that tax check comes in. And so you want to set up their yearly campaign based around those different things. Whereas if you're looking at a financial client or even a real estate client, you're looking at seasonality and when those campaigns come in play. And what their spend is, right? And so you don't want to be wasting money. When your retail clients are out there spending money on those Black Fridays and they're trying to get people to buy, those other clients that we have, we want them to stay away from that and spend their money at different times.
So I think we should explain, every client that we work with and every business in the country would love to have a 1 cent cost per click, cost per conversion, right? Like that's of course, and we all do the best that we can to get to that point. But I think we need to explain how all these advertising platforms, it's kind of a behind the scenes thing, but we call it a bid, right? Which is different from your budget.
Right.
And so I think we should. Does anybody want to take that one, kind of walking through how the bid works versus the budget?
We'll let you do that.
Okay, yeah. So you might have, let's say you have $1,000 budget for the month, right? And that's great, right? We're going to put $1,000 towards your ad sets, or towards your campaign, towards your individual ads, try to meet whatever the goals are, and we're going to spend $1,000. Now on the back end, the way the algorithms work and the way the different platforms work is they kind of operate off of a bid system. So for example, the harder there's some back and forth, right? But every kind of customer, right? If we're talking about paid social, every user kind of has a different bid associated with them for your campaign. So it's going to be cheaper to reach certain individuals based on what their traits are, what you're trying to target, what competition is in there. for that individual, all of these types of things, right? So you might have someone that you can reach very easily and is going to purchase that product. Let's say, for example, in this retail, they purchase clothing all the time, and they do it online all the time, right? They buy tons of clothes online, and Facebook knows that. So you might assume that it's very easy to reach that individual and very easy to convert them. That's not always the case, because clothing is an industry that is very dense or very populated, right? It's saturated. There's a ton of retailers, and so it's actually more expensive because everybody wants to reach that person because it's almost a guaranteed sale.
Right.
So the bid, let's just make it up, right? The bid for that person might be $1.50. If the way that your budget works, the way that it's kind of divided up, if you can't reach that individual for $1.50, say someone else has a total budget of $3,000, they're going to get that person over you, right? So it's kind of like an auction, if you will, right? In that regard, so whoever's willing to pay more to get that client is going to get it. I like to use the example. It's probably a bad example, but I always describe it as I think you and I might have been talking about this the other day. Cell phones. Everyone has a cell phone. Everyone needs a cell phone. Everyone's always getting cell phones. I don't know this for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if a third cell phone provider besides Apple and Samsung were to come into the market. It might actually be very easy for them to spend because that is not a very saturated market. I don't know that. Facebook might be, someone's probably going to come after me for saying that, but just that's the concept, right? It's not a very saturated market, but everybody needs one, so it could be cheap if you were in that industry. So at the end of the day, the amount of money you spend is super important because it allows the bid to kind of fluctuate in a way that can make you competitive. If you're in a very saturated industry and you're trying to spend $100 a month, it's not going to go very far.
Yeah, and especially when you're looking at times that's the most competitive.
Exactly.
When we're looking at like that Black Friday sale, you want to make sure that you're budgeted correctly so that if that's your market that you're trying to hit, that in order to hit them, you have to be prepared to spend money because you're in competition with everybody else in the market that's doing that. It's interesting. So one of the things like around 4th of July, there's a lot of 4th of July sales, right? Memorial Day sales. Then we go in, through the summer months and then we hit that Black Friday, which people start planning way ahead of time. A lot of times, and we did this for our clients, is I'll say, you know what, for that week of 4th of July, I'm shutting off your ads. We're not spending any money during those ads because it doesn't make sense for you to compete against those that are trying to reach your clients in a different sector. Because you may have the same ideal client that somebody that's in the retail business has. You have it in your service industry or financial industry or real estate industry, but you're all trying to reach that same client. Your retail person has a lot more money to spend than you do. So we're going to shut those ads off, let them have at it. And then when they're done, we're going to bring you back into the market so that you're spending less and your cost per click is less, your cost per lead is less, your cost per customer acquisition is less. And then your lead quality goes up, then your conversions go up. And that's really the most important. And I think no matter what we share with our clients, whether it is, we have all these KPIs that we look at as we're running people's ad campaigns across, different platforms. But what our clients care about is their ROI and how many conversions they're getting. So I could tell them, hey, your cost per click is X, or your click-through rate is, this percent. And they don't really care about that. They just want to know how many leads did I get? And then we converted X amount of those leads. And that's how much revenue that we brought in. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we win if we're bringing in more conversions for our clients. So that is why we recommend not spending money on X day if you're a service business, but we want to promote our retail clients in those spaces. And so we look at so many different things across the board. And I actually do think it's really hard for our clients to understand everything that we're looking at when we're running ads. And they only look at the one thing, but we're looking at all the other stuff behind the scenes, which is why if you're a solopreneur or somebody that is starting in a business or don't want to spend the money for somebody that does this on a daily basis, it's frustrating and it's hard because you aren't watching that stuff every day. You're not seeing the same things that we're seeing. And so then you're like, well, I'm not getting conversions and I'm not getting leads and I'm not getting, a good rate of return. And it's because there are so many variables that you need to understand.
Or if you are watching it every day, it could be a bit of a shock if from one day to the next you see cost per whatever increase significantly, or you see click-through rate drop significantly.
It's kind of like the stock market.
Well, yeah, it's like when we're talking about I don't have an example, and it's hard to quantify without having details. But if you are watching it every day and you're not quite familiar on some of the back end workings, and you are advertising on Black Friday or the couple of days leading up to Black Friday, and all of a sudden you see your cost per link click jump from, let's say it's been at 12 cents and now all of a sudden it's 18. Well, it's only 6 cents, but over the course of a long, that might seem like a lot, but it's because of the one day, right?
Right, and it's also because you have to look at your competition. As your competition goes up, your price is going to go up.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't realize, because we aren't, but like our clients are only one person, and when they're looking at it and they're like, oh my gosh. And we get those calls too. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I just jumped in my ad account and it's X amount of dollars. What happened? Well, it's like looking at the market, right? Well, the market changed. And the competition changed, and there are other things that are going on that you have to take into consideration and that you're not thinking about. So,
well, and the same concept applies to organic social media. When you come into those September, October, November, December months, like if you're not in that, if those aren't your months to sell, like you might see a dip in reach and engagement and across all of your analytics. Yeah. And then client might come to us and be like, well, what happened? Like what went wrong? Like we're doing the same concepts that we were doing in August.
Yeah.
Well, like, okay, let's slow down. Like let's compare your numbers from last October to this October. That's like a big piece that I think a lot of clients and business owners miss, is comparing like July to August versus August to August. Right. Like those are the metrics that we need to compare to really get that apples to apples rather those apples to oranges comparison.
That's a great point, because just thinking about the holidays, does it make sense to post at 8 a.m. on January 1st on organic social? I mean, there's algorithms and things. Right. Social media isn't quite as chronological as it used to be, right. But still, social media is dead at 8 o'clock on January 1st, 8 a.m. Right? It's just that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah. No, I think it's important, and just to kind of reiterate that's why we always say across social media, you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent in whatever you do. And once you get that consistency down, if you want to try the different trends that are going out there and you want to try and keep up with the algorithm, then if you're consistent, you have something to fall back on that allows you to be able to do those different things and see what's working. But consistency is important to start with from a social standpoint, and then you can build from there. So,
because we have to be able to develop that baseline to compare it to. And I feel like that is what people, like social media ads, like it's a long game. Mm-hmm. And like, you said that to all of our clients, and I think sometimes they can miss that. And it really is so true. And being able to continue that consistency and playing that long game, that's going to be how you see success on those digital platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's go back to holiday, and let's talk about let's go back to like our retail clients. Our retail client has a brick and mortar and they have an online business. Let's talk about how we would set up a campaign for them and things that they should consider as they're looking at marketing to their customer base through the holidays. So give me your thoughts on that and what we want to do for them. And I think it's important too that we look at what we're doing organic socially alongside what we're doing from a paid standpoint, and then what they're doing themselves on their storefront and how they're putting their information and their sales and their stuff out. I think that's important to look at that too. Also, we should consider, how they're emailing their customer base, and how, if they're doing SMS messaging, how they're texting their customer base, because all of that becomes your holistic campaign, which is how we look at things, is holistically. So thoughts or ideas on how to start working with clients on that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I typically, like you said earlier, they're going to have all of like their products and most likely images, video, all that done from last year. So we're coming in and they're giving us the product catalog. Like, they're giving us those pieces that have already been determined. Like, these things are our product catalog for this winter, So going in with that mindset of those things are already set in stone. And then from there, looking at that holistic piece of, do they have that SMS, email marketing, and social media, paid advertisement, what's their budget, and allocating that based on consumer trends from last year. And then I feel like it's always helpful to go along with those, a few trends here and there, because those do change, from year to year. So being able to really have that holistic approach is, I feel like, step number one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think, kind of going back to that holistic point, you want to make sure that your overall theme of your campaign definitely stays similar throughout all of the channels you're using, but you're going to have to take a different messaging approach between your organics and your email. The people, you already kind of own their attention. They've signed up for your email either through previous purchases or through just putting their email in for certain coupon codes or whatever the case may be. Same for social media. If you're getting them organically, they're already interested in your product. I think you have to attack them possibly less aggressively than you're going to have to on your your paid media side, what you're doing on your storefront. You're going to have to get stuff that grabs people's attention, because everybody's budget during those couple months of the year is going to go up double or triple. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to be fighting, tooth and claw to get that person's attention, because it is such a crowded space that time of year. So I just think it's important to kind of match your messaging to the channel you have, and whether or not you already have that person's attention, or if you're having to fight everybody else to get that person to walk off the street.
Well, and I think that's the difference between your email marketing and the people that you're going after on your paid advertising. Your email and your social are more likely to match up, just because your social people your social piece, your organic social, they're warmer because you have your following. You're hoping that you're picking up additional people that are going to follow you. And from an email standpoint, you can do some different fun things with, you already have that list. They're already following you. Most likely they're already in your customer base and have purchased from you and know you and trust you. And so from that standpoint, you want to market them a little bit differently, or maybe give them a different offer, right? Maybe you want to give them a more enticing offer to come visit, or you can invite them to like a pre-sale sale, or
exclusivity factor.
Exclusive, like night before the sale starts or something like that. Some different things that you can do. And those are people that you've been nurturing along the way, right? If you have an email list, most likely you've been talking to them, and now you're saying, hey, it's holiday time. Here's some things that we have for you, and you're already in our client base, so here's an extra % off. Or if you bring your email in or show us your email in, and then you get an extra 10% off or something of your purchase. So there are different ways that you can nurture your warm audience base, for sure. Even
thinking of it from the paid ad strategy, there's kind of a similar approach or concept, I guess, where if in this case we're talking brick and mortar and online, right? And online, obviously, most cases you can sell all over the country, right? And so if you have a brick and mortar, for those businesses that have a brick and mortar, I mean, there's overhead there, right? There's costs associated with that. You don't want to have 100% online sales, but have a brick and mortar that's all set up and pretty, and no one comes in, right? You're staffing it, all that.
Right.
So there's, I've seen some examples where, and we've done some examples where, depending on the location, right, depending on what type of retail you are, you might have two different ad sets or campaigns, right? You might have one where you're trying to entice people to come into your store and set an extremely small radius. It might be a mile, 2 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles. If you're in a shopping mall, right, like where people are going to be looking for holiday purchases, right? Set it to a mile, 2 miles, and you're more likely. I think the thought process is if you can get people into your store, they're more likely to buy more. You're able to upsell them, right? They're seeing the products, they're feeling them. There's a bit more of a connection, right? So, but anyway, kind of a smaller radius, a mile, 2 miles, 5 miles, just depending on where your location is, what traffic patterns are, things like that. And then you've got that larger, whether it's the entire city or the state or the country, right? Depending on the size that you're solely focused on online, because no one's going to come from Arkansas to Montana to buy a blanket, whatever it is.
Exactly. No, I think that's important too, and especially if we're looking at setting up, like you said, Sean, paid ad campaigns where we are looking at the local brick and mortar versus the online store that has a further reach. And so you want to set up your campaigns also based in your messaging based on those two separate customer bases that you're trying to reach.
Yeah, and it's that exclusivity in the promo piece, right? Where maybe that smaller local area that you're advertising, hey, come and see us in person. Maybe that is a different type of offer or a different type of, the approach is obviously different. It's just what you're offering them, right? And you have that flexibility because people can come in, they can show you something, they can bring you something, you can give them something, right? So there's, again, thinking of the business model, you don't want to have no one coming into your store, because then what's the point of having a store?
Right. No, and I think going back to Kirk's point too, when we're looking at our warm audiences and how we're reaching out to them from an email or a text thing, you can even drill down further where you can divide your email list into those coming to your local store versus those that are shopping online. And you can still create some kind of a campaign or some kind of a special offer for those that are already in your universe, where whether they're online or local, you can say, hey, here's a special offer or a free gift with purchase or something from an online standpoint, and then come into our shop. So you show us your email and get a percentage off, or again, another, like a gift with purchase, or if it's holiday and you're doing an ornament or something like that, you can do that. Our retail client actually used to give mini candles because they have their own candle line. So they did mini candles, and that was their gift with purchase if they came on or if they ordered online. But how you target them is a little bit different, so they know where to go to get that. So I think that's important to consider as well. So it's just really looking at who your clients are, who's already in your universe, how to get more people in your universe, and then how we want to target and tackle them, and then how our budget aligns with what our goal is for that particular season. But it's important to keep in mind that your season actually starts the year before.
Right.
I think people don't really understand, or they don't think about it. We don't think about it either. Like, I think you and I were talking. I walked into a store and it was like, it's July and already the Halloween stuff is out, right? The fall is out, and in a month, Christmas and all of that's going to be out too. And it's kind of like, it's still warm outside. It's still summer.
Right.
But those trends that we're seeing now were actually developed a year ago. So people think things are trending now, but actually those trends were being developed
in a boardroom.
Yeah,
a year
exactly.
ago.
In a boardroom or at the marketplaces in Atlanta and Chicago, and people are buying for their next retail season. So,
well, and now too, like there are so many, like the sales are getting larger and larger. Like it's not like it's just Black Friday that we're preparing for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, last year, like Walmart and Target, I think, had their Black Friday sales out like 3 weeks ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the same. Like they were the same sales just all the way through. So it's like, how do these small businesses and small organizations compete with that?
I have this grudge with the people at Amazon who call a 2-day event Prime Day. Like just the
Amazon Prime Day.
Yeah, it's
right?
Prime Day, but it's 2 days, and then
Yeah.
you have 47 of them a year, and it's like, wait a minute,
Right.
like you're
There's
lost.
only two.
Yeah.
But okay, so
July
days,
days.
add weekend,
Right.
Prime
or,
weekend.
or like the Christmas in July events,
Yeah.
right? Where, okay, instead of Christmas in July, because it's, we're also doing back to school sales and all of that. And I think it's because everybody's in that one-up mentality, right? Like if I can start my sale here, then I can get a jump on the game here. And so that's why in November too, I think all of the local stores do the Shop Small Business Saturday and things like that. So they try to come up with their own special day where people can shop. And so it's just, again, looking at your whole year, planning that out, figuring out where you want to spend your money, who you want to target, and then how does that align with your goals? And then working with your agency to put that together and get that set and get it running like a well-oiled machine. So,
well, and if for some reason you don't have that together, by, right now we're recording this, it's July, but if you don't have that comes together in the next few months, like before those big sales, there's nothing wrong with taking it easy this year and planning for next year and going into that year ready and prepared and just gonna hit the ground running, because like that is really what is going to set yourself up for the best success, is being being prepared and planned out for the entire year.
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. For more information on 5 and Rise, you can find us at 5andrise.com or follow us on social media at 5 and Rise. Join us for our next episode. Subscribe to our podcast channel and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.